Now, in your documentary, there's several about UFOs and bases potentially on the moon and various missions that astronauts have taken and kind of seen some unusual stuff. Plus, you go through with some experts some unusual pictures that have been taken
Yeah.
on the moon. What do you think's going on the moon? I guess you call it the far side of the moon, or that's what it's known as, where all this suspicious activity is supposedly taking place.
I mean, some of it is happening all over the moon. There's been videos and pictures that have been shared from the side that faces the moon as well. From many of the early um, the project. So Apollo manned missions were the first for man to go around the moon. But before that, you had the lunar orbiter, which was a satellite built to photograph the whole lunar landscape. And they used those missions to plan out where they were going to land during the manned missions. So during those photos from the lunar orbiter, some investigators and a fellow Canadian that I partnered up with for this series called Secret Space UFOs, he went by the name of Luna Cognita. He did a whole bunch of research and poured through the Lunar Surface Journal, which is a repository that the Apollo manned mission photos were dumped to online. And that database got updated subsequently after researchers like him downloaded those photos and in Photoshop, enhanced and changed lighting and stuff and found that there were structures on the moon, on the far side of the moon, and even on um, the face that faces Earth all the time. There's only one side of the moon that we ever see. The moon doesn't rotate like spin like the Earth does. The moon just it rotates around the Earth, but it stays facing one side only. And strangely enough, the Apollo manned missions, they targeted certain areas that researchers like Richard Hoagland, Richard C. Hoagland, and Mike Barra investigated photography that was taken during the Apollo missions, and found that there was all kinds of strange structuring, like glass-like structures. It almost looked like scaffolding over the lunar surface in the distance above the horizon of the lunar surface. And just like Mons Hadley, a strange mountain area that supposedly looks like there's a pyramid structure there. All these really strange anomalies that should not occur on this planetoid if it really is just a rock that formed billions of years ago when the Earth formed, and is nothing but geologic and selenologic material.
Do you believe that some of these things are still active, or are these objects that may have been used in the past and now they're kind of abandoned?
Yeah, I think there's probably, in my mind, if there was technology that is ancient on the moon that seems highly advanced, but now the moon is just this derelict, bombed out, um, you know, lifeless place, it could be possible that the technology that's still there is autonomous. And that goes for some of the UFO sightings. I think it's possible that some of the UFOs that we're dealing with might not be manned craft. They could be autonomous artificially intelligently run craft that could be probes from a higher intelligence, right? Um, so the moon might have some of that sort of technology just crawling around it. And there's a book called Who is on the Moon, I think. And it shows photos of tracks that are fresh on the moon going in and out of craters, like some kind of rover type um, um, machine that is going over the lunar landscape, even back in the 1960s, before we even had remote technology like that. Um, we have rovers on Mars, but that came way later. We didn't have that back in like the 60s and 70s on the moon. Or that could be deeply classified, and we do have some of that stuff. But I know that China right now is really interested in landing on the far side of the moon, the dark side of the moon, which is a nickname. It does get sunlight, but recently the head of NASA, the NASA administrator, um, came out and said that when he was asked in a congressional hearing why China would be so interested in landing on the far side of the moon, he said that he didn't know why. And he said, furthermore, that NASA does not know what's on the far side of the moon, which is total BS because um, we were mapping the far side of the moon with our orbiters and the Clementine mission and every type of satellite you can think of. So were the Russians for like since the 1960s. So how could we not know what's on the far side of the moon? I think China is probably trying to pick up some of this ancient technology or check it out the same way we were back in the 1960s and early 70s.
Yeah, I interviewed Paul Hellyer before he passed away. For anyone that doesn't know, he was the highest ranked official to officially go on the record about UFOs,
In
I
Canada.
believe. Yeah, from Canada. And he said NASA were liars because they act like we should be all excited to fly little micros in far off planets. And he's like, they're very aware that we're currently being visited.
Oh yeah. So I believe he was the Minister of Defense during the earlier Trudeau era, not Pierre Trudeau. He
Yeah,
served under
Pierre
Pierre
Elliott
Trudeau.
Trudeau.